Hello, world. Hello, Alex.
Hello.
Hey.
So we are here with Andrew French today in the Into the Darkroom podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. This is just fantastic. Such a great school, and everyone I met is just delightful. And your group, your senior group, is super talented. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So you are a super interesting artist that I don't think that any of us really knew about as far as your credentials. And I found, and I think my classmates as well found your resume to be really interesting.
Oh, good. Thank you.
As far as what you talked about in the beginning with special education, how do you think that helped shape you even as an artist?
That's a great question. I think it showed patience, finding different ways to achieve a goal, in a sense. I taught specifically in an arts program for kids. And so it was music, dance, and drama.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an unusual way to get to kids who had a trouble maybe understanding things another way. Or the fact that kids with disabilities can have fun too. Yeah. And we didn't segregate by disability. So we're all kinds of disabilities, from physical to mental to emotional. And the woman who ran this, Miriam Perron, was a real inspiration. She was actually a journalist by trade, but she had a kid who had a disability, and that was the catalyst to start this. So when I went to college, I thought, I'll be able to do the arts in my school programs. And people were not as interested in the arts in the everyday classroom. I think it had to be a specific school. But I still find it's such a universal way to communicate with people, to connect with people, whether it's visual or auditory. So maybe it's connection, maybe it's patience, maybe it's also appreciating people for what they have. We still kind of segregate people who have disabilities, So that was a learning experience, I think, that I still keep today.
Nice. So as far as you moving from Illinois to New York, I think I had a kind of similar conflict with my mom as far as her being able to understand why specifically I went into the arts. Do you feel like you ever had a conflict where you doubted before you left to go pursue your career?
Oh my gosh, I was so focused on it. I bought my ticket 3 weeks before I was going. I showed my parents the ticket, and they said, "That's nice, honey," kind of thing. And they thought for sure I'd be back in a few days.
Yeah.
And then when they found that I wasn't, that was when my mom said, "Were you in trouble with the law? Why did you leave and not come back?" And, she's, my parents were older, and there was a time of you get a full-time job and you stay there all your life and get married and have kids and have a pension, and that's your life. But I didn't have that interest. And my dad's response was very different. He said, "You're on a great adventure. I'm so happy you're doing this. You will learn so much, and we're behind you're doing this." But my mom was really not. She was kind of freaked out. They visited the city, and they liked the city, but they said it's dirty and loud. Of course, all the stuff that we like about New York is what makes a big urban, central, center what it is. So yeah, she got over it eventually, but it was hard at first.
Do you think it was hard for you moving from such a rural, or it wasn't really rural, it was more a citywide?
It's a small city, though. I mean, it's, this sounds silly, Rockford, Illinois, where I'm from, is at the top of the state. It's right next to Wisconsin. I'd never been to the beach. I mean, at an ocean. So, I've been to the Great Lakes, so Lake Michigan, Lake Superior. But to go to an ocean is a very different animal. And so being landlocked, I didn't know that. I didn't grow up in a big city. I didn't have a lot of cultural references. My dad was certainly a pretty well-read guy. My mom was a very crafty person, so she made things with her hands. My dad eventually became a weaver when he retired, which is quirky. But he was very well-read, and he would read lots of papers. And but in terms of the arts, it was I was going to learn on my own in that sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned Ruth Orkin as kind of like this big mentor for when you first got to New York. How do you suggest going about getting a mentor when you're looking for a job more so in like commercial work?
Honestly, being yourself and being I mentioned politely persistent. So people will hire you because they like you to be around or like to be around you. So, there's a degree of, there's this really old book by a guy named Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And, I don't think that you need to push down your own personality. But being enthusiastic, being helpful, being kind, being interested, all help. And I was all those things. And I kind of pushed my own work back a little bit to help these people because I realized that's what they need the help for. And a few people had mentioned, why don't you ever want me to look at your pictures? And I said, well, I don't know if you would ever want to look at them, or I always think that my job is to help you, not you to help me. And I think people appreciated that, but I think certain people were interested in, helping me if they could. But going about it now would be, sending someone a note either through their DM on Instagram or an email and introducing yourself. It certainly helps to have a friend of a friend or someone who knows someone. That's always the really great way. But, let's say you're a Wes Anderson fan who makes amazing movies. I think his phone number used to be in the book or used to be accessible. But, he's a person who has a studio and he has a staff, and most really successful people at that level have internships. Right. Either in the summer or throughout the year. So, and they always have them through schools, and sometimes they're not through schools. So I really encourage anyone to reach out to people whose work you like, and ask them if they need assistance or if they interns. And if they don't, say, is there another time that they might be able to? I guess one of the sad things is you might like someone's work a lot, and then when you meet them, they're kind of a jerkosaurus. So that happens too. But ideally, you should be around someone that you're happy to be around and that makes you feel good, and they don't, belittle you. Hey, if someone hires you or has you as an intern and they ask you to take out the garbage, they're only doing it because if you don't take it out, they have to take it out. So you're sort of, or they say, could you get coffee? Well, if you were there to get coffee, they'd have to go do it. So it's really stuff. You're just helping an extension of that person,
Yeah. So I know for my classmates at least, when you mentioned Tyler Mitchell, it was like this huge reaction because two of them are like super into fashion, and obviously know his work since he's like this big person in the fashion industry now.
So successful. Yeah. Amazing.
And he just had a show, I believe, come out, a new series or something.
Oh, he did?
Like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What was it like working with him? And I know you also mentioned Annie Leibovitz. What was it like working with like two pretty big names?
Yeah. Well, Annie was, I was an assistant with her, and it was really a very good friend of mine, was her full-time assistant for 2 years, and she was looking for a new assistant. So he recommended me to her. So I assisted her for 3 days, and she was really kind of rough, and maybe that's just her way. But it was not something that was a good fit for me.
Mm.
And it was very exciting to work with her. And I would, I've seen her and mentioned, yeah, she looked at me and said, I know you from somewhere. I said, yeah, I work with you. It was 3 days, but she's, so intense and so brilliant at what she does. I admired her work, and it wasn't a good fit at the time, but I'm so happy I did it the 3 days I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tyler was a student of mine at NYU in the film department. So I teach in the film department. He was a full-time film student. He was a freshman, so he was 18 or 19. Just very focused, studious guy. Relatively quiet. Made terrific short films. We make a doc, an experimental, and a narrative in the class. The only film I know that I have access to is experimental, and I show that frequently in class. It may even be on YouTube. I don't know what he did, but it's a stop motion piece he did on food in a kitchen. It's really quirky. It's really good.
It's really funny.
And so, that was a great class I had that year. And I obliquely stay in touch with a few of the students. And that was 10 years ago, maybe longer. But I knew Tyler was really a go-getter and is ambitious. And he put the work in, I have to say. So he was a model for a while. And he would put himself out there and his work out there to get attention. Like, I think the ID magazine has like the ID 50 or top 50. He was one of the 50 for quite a while. And I think it maybe had to have people vote for you. I'm not quite sure. But he was out in the, made himself visible in the sort of commercial culture. And I think that helped him put on the map. So I have to say, he really put the work in.
Mm.
And then he was mentored by Deborah Willis, who's the head of the photography department at NYU. And I think he quotes that she was a huge inspiration and guide for him to do his photography, especially topically what he does. Gordon Park certainly was an inspiration.
Mm.
So after he left my class, my class is a 5 hours, one semester class, but we didn't stay in touch. We occasionally send a note to each other, but he's a big time guy. He's a superstar now. He's amazing. I love his work.
Yeah, he's really someone that I think a lot of people in my class look up to for different reasons. But he's such an interesting guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And he hit a mark with the content of of what he shoots and stuff that we haven't seen before. It's really smart, beautiful work.
And I know you seem like a very like humble guy for knowing like all of these like different photographers and stuff like that, and being a part of their success, whether it was in a small way or a big way. How did it feel like knowing that you kind of helped them like in their ladder to success, I guess?
Well, I guess I don't think about it that way in a sense. Although this I've mentioned, and my friend Abe Frondlich, I assisted a long time with, and he was a real, and is still a very good friend. We worked on lots of jobs and traveled. So he had the photographs of me and Annie Leibovitz and Ilsa Bing today and Cindy Sherman.
Mm.
And I have to say, Abe he's going to have a big retrospective in Frankfurt next year of his work. He's 76. And he's just churns out lots of books. He's really prolific. But whenever we talk, he always says, "You were there, man. I couldn't have done it without you." He's always very, very appreciative. And that makes me feel good. I mean, it is a collaboration, and you're hired to do a job, and that should be expected. But he's always commenting, man, we did this picture together, which so it makes, it's very nice to get appreciated like that.
Mm.
But ultimately, it is a little bit of a team. I mean, as you go up in a bigger shoot, maybe there's going to be a crew of 4 or 5 people.
Mm.
And if it's even a bigger shoot in this fashion, there is a stylist, and there's hair and makeup, and there's someone building a set, and there's 2 assistants. And so I think really, really good photographers really appreciate the people who help them create their images.
Well, that's always good. For people to know, for students to know, and also just in general, a good quality to have for a photographer.
Those are the people you want to be around.
Yeah.
You want good people in your sphere, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So since you specifically work more in the commercial realm, what advice do you have for people wanting to get into more commercial work? And how can one become a photographer for a magazine?
Boy, it's so competitive now. I think it's more competitive now than it was ever. And I hear stories. So photo editors are the people who would hire you, and they're in the magazine world.
Mm.
And the producers and the art buyers are the people that work on the ad agencies. So those are the people that you want to connect with. And, even you want to do something thoughtful and, how can I say, pinpointed. Like, look at photographers whose work you like, who were published in a magazine. Look at the comments that they make in their Instagram, and more than likely, they're going to thank the photo editor that hired them.
Yeah.
Those are the people that you need to write down. You need to write down that photo editor's Instagram and make a list of all these photo editors. So that's number one. How do you find out who they are? Because there's no list. They don't publish, like the New York Times, for example, they don't publish a masthead every day of who the photo editors there are. And there are a lot because it's a daily paper, and there's online, and there's international.
Yeah.
So if you could go, look at photographers whose work you like who are shooting for magazines, look at the comments, write down these photo editors, and those are the people you need to start introducing yourself to. Say, hey, my name's Alex. I'm, really love your work and the assignments I see. Is it possible that somebody could show you my work? It literally just is asking if they could take a look at your work. And their job is really to always be finding new photographers. It's part of their sort of employment rules. They need to stay current, and they'll also find the right photographer for the right job. So if you introduce yourself and you leave a little drop-off printed piece with your name and number, if they like you, they may file it in a cabinet, and they may not call you for a year or 2, but they'll wait until the right job comes along, and then they'll contact you. It sounds crazy, but it's sort of the way it is. Unless you're there at the right time, sometimes fate works really well with you, and you happen to be at the right point where, oh my gosh, I need someone to shoot this job. You're perfect. What are you doing next week?
Yeah.
But they'll want someone they want to see your work. They want to know that you can create a set. They want to know that you're friendly to, if it's a person that you're shooting, they want to know that you're friendly and interested in them, and that you can get the job done, and that you work quickly. All these things they'll want to see in your work, and they'll hopefully see it. But they'll want to look for those kind of qualities too. But again, it's just nosing around and finding. I mentioned this thing called the agents list, and I'll send a link to Eric, and it's a list of hundreds and hundreds of photography agents. And again, not that you would want to go to them all, but maybe you're going to look through them and see a smaller one. You'll like the work. Some of the photographers, you might see there's a spot with your look that these people don't have, or maybe it'll help you hone your look before you show them their stuff. But agents and representatives are also more than happy to meet with you and see your work. A lot of people are doing portfolio reviews now. That's really big around the country. Here in LA, it isn't cheap, so you have to pay money. But what it does is puts your work in front of the person, and they get to see your work in your face.
Yeah,
it's a good investment, and I think that's also effective, but it does cost a little money.
So you mentioned Esquire, I think Microsoft, Nordstrom. Those are just like three, I think, that you mentioned that you worked for. What had it been like working for these big names? Was there anxiety going into your first job or any job really with the big names?
Esquire was editorial assignment, so that's what they call magazine jobs. And so it's a little looser. You get the story, you talk with the photo editor, here's the assignment. Really good photo editors don't really tell you what they want. They let you figure it out. And they look for your take or what you're going to bring to the picture. Because they've seen your work and they know that you're competent. You'll come back with something compelling.
Right.
It's always a little nerve-wracking, especially if they're to travel. You say, oh my gosh, I'm on a plane. I'm flying to do this thing. I can't believe it, and I don't know what I'm doing. Or I have some ideas, and you have a little confidence talk with yourself. Say, don't go to imposter syndrome. You know what you're doing. But it's my approach. I mean, a pretty quiet approaching person. I'm not like a loud and aggressive. My personality, so I think that works for me. Frequently you'd show up and the person that you're photographing says, okay, what do you want to do? I said, well, let me look around. I'll set things up and I'll call you back. So that person literally leaves. You set up your lights in the situation you are. They come in, you photograph them for 5 minutes, then they go away, and then you photograph them again. So, and not always like that, but that's one scenario. With digital, it's a little easier. Shooting film, it was a little tougher. You'd have to shoot a Polaroid to make sure you had your frame and your lighting right. But shooting digital, and even shooting digital tethered, is even more of a gift that we didn't have, shooting film.
Yeah.
And there's part of me that just loves not knowing. There's that mystery and excitement of shooting film and pre-visualizing it and waiting to see what's going to happen. That's a very different approach than digital capture or shooting digitally. With the commercial clients, it's you usually have a layout, and so they tell you exactly what it is they want, and you work with an art director. And depending on how big the project is, you'll have pre-production time. You may be able to hire a crew. You may have a chance when you get to the place to set up your lights and do some tests. So a commercial shoot's a little, it sounds strange, but it's a little easier because you know what you're doing. And so once you nail the picture that the art director or the creative director wanted in the layout, then they'll look for your input and maybe try different things. But they'll usually come with the layout or some specific look that they want. And that's what your goal is to get that. You'll probably have had a couple meetings with them about this. Now, people will maybe even want a pitch deck. And they'll want a deck that you made in slides or Canva or something where you said, this is the kind of the look I'm thinking. You show other photographers or painters. You'll show other light, maybe color palette. Maybe you're going to work with a stylist. And maybe that's also supplied by the client. Sometimes they'll send that to you saying, this is the look we want. So sometimes it's the other way around, that they'll send you the lookbook or the style book that they'll want you to follow. So, but it's always, I always get a little nervous before the shoot. And you just, hope the photo angels are with you.
For sure. Who do you think have been some big inspirations or influences in your personal work, in your commercial work, in any work that you've made?
Let's see. I get inspired by these photographers that aren't like huge people, but they're doing really big jobs. There's a photographer from South Africa named Koto Bolofo, Kotobolofo. He just got a big award for like Advertising Lifetime Achievement Career Award. He's been shooting for 20, 30 years. But it might not be a name that you know unless you're sort of in the commercial editorial world. And I just love his personality. He's bubbly and upbeat and fun and joie de vivre, he calls himself. But his pictures for me are just always classic and beautiful light, and he's the photographer's photographer for me. He's just really something. So, and then the other person I look to, who's kind of a young, newer guy from England, is named Jack Davison, Davison. He shoots a lot for the New York Times magazine. He has an exhibit now in London. And so if you look at a Jack Davison book or look up his work, I really admire his work. He's very inspiring for me. But other than that, the people whose work I've always known and loved for light, and Irving Penn's work is just work that I can look at and devour every day. Mm. It's timeless and beautiful, and those are the, I guess, qualities that I kind of hope that maybe my pictures, would, people would get that feeling if they looked at them. Who else? I mean, there's such a roster of people who inspire me. I love Lartigue's work. I love Sarah Moon's work. The list kind of goes. William Klein just passed away about a month ago. William Klein is just incredible photographer, cross genres from film to motion to stills. So I have the dreaded photo book disease, as you saw in the studio pictures, and I just, I get as much fun looking at photographs as I do making them. It just is such a pleasure. There's a wonderful author named Teju Cole, who's written a great essay on looking at a photo book. That'd be a great one for you to look up. I remember once I was working with Mary Ellen Mark, and I'd met the photo editor at Life magazine, and I went to see him. It was John, I don't know, can't remember. And so I went to Life and met him. It's always so exciting to go in this building. It still existed. The magazine still existed. Things have changed now. But I said, I'm thinking I like looking at pictures so much. Maybe I should be a photo editor. And this is early on in assisting. And he said, well, do you still like taking pictures? I said, I love making pictures. And he said, well, don't become a photo editor because it's not the same. You'll want to be out actually creating work rather than sitting, assigning and looking at work. So that kind of quenched and stopped my interest in becoming a photo editor, and I don't regret it at all. It feels like a passion you have to do in photography, and it's not always easy, but it's certainly thrilling if you can stay the course, and I hope you guys do. And whatever I can do to help you, please let me know.
That's definitely some food for thought for me, because I'm actually thinking of becoming a photo editor instead of just continuing my journey with photography, although I really do love taking photos.
Well, I have to say, I think it's changed now. That was back in, so it was in the 80s or 90s. I know a number of photo editors who shoot, and they do photo editing to eat and pay the rent for their bills, and they freelance, and they shoot also. So it's actually a really not a bad game plan. So don't give up on that. Don't listen to what I just said. It's very viable now because there's a lot of magazines that are just using freelance photo editors. So it wouldn't mean that you had to be a photo editor full time. So very doable. That's a really great, really smart approach, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, as far as your body of work, you have such a diverse body of work, from different portraits that you do, to your different commercial work. I think the one that you showed in the slide with the Polaroid, I believe it was, with the champagne glass, I think really drew me in because I don't think I've ever seen that much detail within a Polaroid. So that was definitely interesting for me. Would you say having a different experience and photographing different things is important?
I think it's important for you if you're deciding on one genre that you want to focus on. In New York, people really expect you to be a specialist. So it's unusual that you could, and certainly at a big caliber. Mm. So you could do still lifes, you could shoot some events, you could do some portraits, you could do some fashion, do some interiors, but more than likely, the people who are hugely successful focus on one genre or one thing. I think that's been a challenge for me because I've even had photo editors say, "Well, I don't know what to do with you," because I do too many things. So, yeah, as I say, it's a blessing and a curse that I do a variety of things. But right now it's mostly portraits, so it's changed a bit. I don't do as many interiors as I used to. And now it's, what's changed is being on the map and getting jobs is so much about marketing. So that's my weak point, is marketing and social media, which is, I see people doing this. And they'll post 2-3 times a day, and they're doing reels and stories. And it's, it really takes discipline and focus to do that. But I think this is how people are finding work.
I can't say I'm too big on social media either. Even with me being like in that kind of generation, I know how to post. It's fine, but I'm not like super in the ins and outs of it, I guess.
Hooray for that. I mean, I think that, there are articles people are writing even recently about how horrible Instagram is, how it just sucks the life out of you. At the same time, it's exciting to see what people are doing. And if you can be a little detached from it and look at it and then put it away. I don't really care if anyone looks at my post or not. I'm supposed to. So that's a problem, number one. I love that Eric posts pictures of his dog. That sounds really interesting to me. But that won't help me get more work. So it is a real... and there's a real specific way to do this for you to know when to post and how often to post. And now stories have become even more important. Stories and reels have become more important than actually the post itself. So it's become a little complicated, but it certainly is what you have to do to get on the map, I think.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your studio space. It looks like such a nice little area. You have these really huge windows that let in light from the north, I think you were saying. How do you think that having a studio like that has benefited you? Where you can have this continuous light that comes in that's pretty consistent.
I think it's one thing that's helped me feel as confident shooting any way. I can shoot into the light, I can shoot 3/4 of the light, I can shoot side lit, I can shoot flat light, backlight. It's certainly given me confidence about learning how to shoot in various areas and see light better. I know that I love this 3/4 soft light. That's my favorite light. And, style is based on repetition. But maybe it's a little too much because it sort of looks like the same picture over and over. I mean, Richard Avedon did the same white picture over and over and over. But, he made a name for himself. So, when I doubt myself about that, I realize I go back and I'll look at the pictures I like so much. And they're this beautiful 3/4 light. It's hard to explain. I'm so happy to be there every day. The challenges is it's expensive. New York's expensive. You know, my wife says we could have bought a house 5 times over from the money you put in the rent, because everything is rented in New York and it's expensive. So, you know, it's the one thing about having a studio is you constantly have to feed it. You constantly have to maintain it, and you're responsible for the rent. So it is another thing that you have to have and you're responsible for. So not having it does relieve a little pressure, but also for me, the studio's been a place to do workshops, to meet people. It's very social. It's very exciting to create work there. It's been a real hub of inspiration for me, and I don't regret that at all. I hope I continue to stay there, and hopefully I keep making work and making an income. That's I feel as though I'm not at the fourth quarter. Maybe I'm at halftime, 3/4, but hopefully I have a ways to go still.
Would you say that you prefer shooting with the natural light within your studio, or would you prefer like the artificial lights that you bring in?
I prefer the natural light. Mm-hmm. It's so exciting to me. Yeah, I just think it's just stellar.
And you were talking about that blue hue that you get.
And the blue you get, sometimes I purposefully, make the color bad on my white balance to make it look bluer. Certainly can do that in post-production, but I love it if I shoot raw JPEG. And if I see it on the JPEG, I say, oh, this is what I want to make on my raw file. It gives me maybe just a little preview of what I like or what I have a sense for. Yeah. I can't remember. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that answers the question.
I can't remember. Yeah, I love the studio, the light. Oh, I know. Yeah, I like the continuous light more in the daylight. As a result of that, I like continuous light sources. I do love strobe. Strobe is highly unique. It's so crispy and sharp, and it freezes your subject. But I have to say, there's a really beautiful softness in continuous light artificial light that I really like too. So if I had a choice, I'd rather do daylight or continuous light than strobe, but I do both.
So as far as you being more into portraiture now, I know a lot of the times, and I know with myself, with photographing my family and just with people in general, the environment can be a little weird at times. Like things can get a little awkward when you're trying to direct somebody to do something that you want them to do. So how do you feel that you are able to make models comfortable? And how would you advise certain people on making models more comfortable with doing what you need or want them to do?
Well, I think models who are professional models are immediately comfortable, and it's easy to talk to them. Same thing with actors; they're immediately comfortable. They thrive to be in front of the camera. That's their dream, But even with those people or non-actors, I just want to go over what we're doing. So if I had a layout, I'd show them the layout. If there's wardrobe, we'd go over the wardrobe. If there was a specific look that I'm looking for, I'd go over it with them. So I think just bringing everybody up to speed and giving everyone the information on what we're doing makes everyone feel much more comfortable, especially non-actors. So if you were to say to a family member you're doing a portrait, you'd have to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Don't go into mom mode. You're the subject now. And so I'm looking for this, and see, hopefully they'll want to, help you out and get in the spirit of things. But I think just clarifying what it is you're doing is a huge help to any model, whether it's a professional model or a non-model person. It makes it a little easier for them to work.
Would you say you like using more natural backgrounds as far as like going outside and shooting outside, or do you feel like you like the more clean, like sleek background?
Oh, it's such a good question. I think about that stuff all the time. I totally nerd out and think about this stuff. I like both. I think I'm taken to clean backgrounds because the studio. I finally started painting my background wall. Well, I made a wall to photograph on. And I've started to paint it a little bit, and it's really exciting to have it not be the same tone constantly. Mm. That said, if you have a background in nature or outside or an exterior or a place that's inside, it can be just as exciting. It all depends on what you're looking for, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah.
Would you say you prefer film over digital?
I do prefer film over digital, but unfortunately, I can't afford the film all the time.
Film has gone way up.
It's so expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, a roll of 35 millimeter color is $15. And then there's processing and scanning. So you have to be real judicious and economical about what you're shooting. I think it's prettier. But at the same time, digital's not going away.
Yeah.
And I think there's, I go back and forth. Honestly, I go back and forth. But my heart's really in physical film. I love the physical thing, not the ones and zeros so much,
Do you get into like the more tactile process of it too? Do you like to develop your own film?
I used to. I mean, I had a darkroom for many years. Mm-hmm. I don't anymore, but the projects that I want to do, I'm in love with this little camera, the Minox. I'll need to make my own prints because it requires a special lens, a special carrier to go into the darkroom. But sadly, no, I'm not in the darkroom as much as I wanted. I have buckets of film are undeveloped. They're just aging like a good wine, I figure. So not quite as bad as Gary Winogrand, but it is. I have large cases of film I've shot that I'm slowly going through.
That could be an interesting, project.
I think so too.
Film age,
I think so too. I'm glad you like that too. That's what I feel too. I feel the same way.
Yeah. Okay, it has been great talking with you. The time has kind of flown by.
Alex, same here. Thank you so much. Great talking with you too.
Would you like to shout out your website or I don't know if you do have
Instagram? You can always look at my website. It's simple as andrewfrench.com. It needs to be redone, but you can get a taste of my work. And my Instagram is Andrew French Photographer. I also have a workshop Instagram. It's Andrew French Workshops. I plan on posting new workshops soon. And then I have one, this A French Studio, which is really more about the physical studio. And that's been a little dormant. But that will be where I post inspirations and details of the studio. So I do have 3 Instagrams. But please check them out. You're welcome to check them out and send me an email or a DM if anyone wants to come by. The studio's at 17th and Broadway. It's right at Union Square West on the 11th floor. And I'm always happy to have people come over for a coffee or a visit. Yeah. It's definitely you, Alex. You have to come by.
Okay.
I would love
I won't pass up that opportunity.
I would love to have you.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I hope to see you again.
Yeah, of course.